I am Ellen Kokinda, and we're going to go ahead and start with preliminary matters with requests for continuances, withdrawals, or postponements, and or addition of ex-agenda items. And I do not have any continuances, withdrawals, or any postponements today. So moving on to announcements and appeals. I just want to announce that you might, if you're watching this from we're now using Zoom. So all of our boards and commission meetings have transitioned to using the Zoom platform or the Zoom webinar platform. So things are going to look a little bit different. We have new slides up to hopefully help with that if you wish to make any kind of public comment, and just bear with us as we transition, because we're going to be trying out some new stuff, and there's always a little bit of a learning curve. So that's just an announcement. No appeals today. And now I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment for items not on the agenda. So if you wish to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, you can do so by clicking on the raise hand icon. And I just want to make one other announcement that I see staff that I need to promote. So just give me a minute for staff. We'll do that in just a second as soon as I close public comment. But if you wish to speak on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand by going to the bottom of your screen, and you can click on the raise hand icon, and that indicates to me that you wish to speak. And I do not see any raised hands at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and just give me a minute because I need to, let's see. Actually, I do have an Albert Dipadova who wishes to speak. Can you go ahead and test your audio?
Hello, it's Albert.
Yes. Did you wish to speak on an item not on today's agenda?
I apologize. I just wanted to see if we were muted or not. Sorry to.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. So for attendees, so if you're joining us as an attendee, yes, you'll be muted, but for applicants and staff, I'll be able to promote you. So just bear with us. All right, thanks so much.
All right.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on items not on this agenda. And then we're going to move to our first project. Give me just one moment, because I am going to promote staff, and we will get started in just a bit. All right. Okay, I think. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I think we're getting staff in. Let's see, I just want to make sure that Kelly gets in. Hey, again, thanks for being patient. So this is 2515 Murrell Road. This is an 8,878 square foot lot located in the E3 zone in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and it's developed with a 972 square foot one-story single-family residence with an attached 411 square foot garage and 405 square foot accessory dwelling unit. The proposal is to provide a new 5-foot tall plaster privacy wall in the front of the house, an 826 square foot addition to the existing residence, and the transfer of 27 square feet from the residence to the ADU with a new trellis and patio entry. So the discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer is an interior setback modification to allow for the proposed addition to be located within the 6-foot setback along the eastern property line. All right, so I think with that, Ms. Brodesson, are you with us? If you could turn on your webcam in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see your video icon. And I can also, let's see. I don't know if you're able to turn on your webcam.
Hello, Ms. Kokinda. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. When I click start video,
Uh-huh.
it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, well, let me
I don't know what that means.
Okay, now you should be able to do it, I think. Try again.
Oh, lovely.
There we go.
Okay, there I
All
am.
right. Thanks for being patient. So whenever you're ready, Ms. Brodesson, please go ahead and take us through the project.
Good morning. This is Kelly Brodesson with Community Development, and I'm presenting a project at 2515 Murrell Road. Ms. Kokina, you just described the project pretty thoroughly, so I'll just summarize. It's an 8,800 square foot lot in the E3 single family zone and in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. There's an existing 970 square foot single family residence with an attached garage, 400 square feet, and a 400 square foot attached accessory dwelling unit in the rear yard behind the house. The application before the staff hearing officer today is for an addition to encroach into the interior setback on the east property line, along the east property line, about 1 foot. So the existing residence is already legally non-conforming to the setback by encroaching approximately 1 foot into the 6 foot setback. And the applicant is requesting that the proposed addition, although mostly it's in the front of the house and in the rear of the house, they do want to align the new addition with the line of the existing building along the eastern property line. So that requires a modification to allow that encroachment into the setback. The encroachment will not be an impact, a significant impact to the neighbors. The windows will be clear story, minimizing any impacts or privacy issues. The project was reviewed by design review, although the addition itself was exempt from design review. The request for a 5 foot tall wall in the front yard triggered the need for design review, and the board viewed the project on October 25th and found it supportable. So for these reasons, staff believes that the proposed encroachment can be found necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot and will result in a development that is generally consistent with the pattern of the neighborhood. So staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the modification, making the findings in the staff report. That concludes staff's presentation, and I believe we have the architect, Ms. Kari, here to also make a brief presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Kari, did you want to please take me through your project, your thought process? Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I don't see me. I think you both were very thorough, and that is exactly the intent, to maintain the continuity of the design of the house along that eastern side. And I think it'll just make for a better project aesthetically, and it is compatible with many homes in the neighborhood have received that type of modification because these homes do encroach in the current side yard setback. And I'd say that would conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Kari. I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind, or I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment. And anyone who wishes to speak on this particular item, you can do so by, hang on just 1 second. Thank you, Will, for bringing that up. You can, if you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your panel, or there's no separate control panel. It's just going to be at the bottom of your screen to the left, and a raised hand indicates that you wish to speak, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. I do not see anyone at the moment who has raised their hand. And I'm just going to ask Ms. Gu, our commission secretary, if we received any additional public comment as of this morning for this item.
No, we have not received any public comment on this particular item. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment for this item. And just state, and I know that we're having some issues with our PDF reader. So if that gets going again, I'm going to ask Will to bring the plans back up. But I can just tell you that I went out on site. I don't really have many questions. I think staff did a really thorough job of in your design as well, looking at the existing conditions and being conscious of privacy when I'm looking at an interior setback request. It's really, privacy is a major concern. And that has clearly been addressed in the clear story windows and not having any major openings along that side. And it is, many of these lots, as you mentioned, Ms. Kari, are non-conforming to the interior setback. And the small addition that you're interested in doing, although it's already non-conforming to the setback, I don't anticipate any significant impacts to the neighbors with that. So I don't need to drag this out. I agree with staff's findings, and I can go ahead and make the finding that the interior setback modification is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Again, it's specifically the intent to allow non-conforming development to exist. And that it's an appropriate improvement on the lot. There are two other findings that staff included with their staff report that I'm comfortable making as well. I don't anticipate any impacts to the neighbors given this, and it is consistent with the type of development that has happened, and also with similar decisions at the staff hearing officer before me that I've seen other requests for additions very similar to this that have similar types of designs to prevent any kind of impact. So that is my decision. I just want to let you know that my decision is appealable. Mr. Russell, if you could turn it to the appeals slide. And we'll have that information up there. Thank you. So yes, if anyone wishes to appeal my decision, it can be done so within 10 calendar days of this meeting. I can also let you know that the Planning Commission has the ability to pull a decision and see it if they see fit, if they disagree or want to look into it a little bit more. And we can go ahead and move on to the next project. Thank you so much to staff and Ms. Kari, I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ellen and Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, actually, if I could have Will, could you check in with me momentarily? I just want to know the status of your PDF reader, how it's going.
Hi, Ms. Wikinda, it is not working at all. So maybe you would be able to take over. I could potentially share the PowerPoint, but yeah, I might need to restart my own computer.
Okay. All right. So just give me one moment. Will, if you want to stop sharing your screen momentarily. Or let me read, if you could pull the project description up, Will, and then I'm going to pull up the plans. And thanks again, everyone, for bearing with us on this. We're having some technical issues. So I'm going to read the project description, and then you'll have to give me just a moment to pull up the plans, and then we'll make sure that the applicant can walk us through and staff. All right. So the next project item number B is 918 West Micheltorena Street. This is a 6,250 square foot site. It's currently developed with a 1,315 square foot single story residence and a 1,508 square foot two-story building comprised of a 708 square foot two-car garage at the lower floor and an 800 square foot residential unit at the second floor. The proposed project involves permitting the as-built conversion of a portion of the garage to a 300 square foot accessory dwelling unit. The remaining lower floor area would be comprised of a 273 square foot one-car garage and a 135 square foot storage space. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer is a parking modification to grant relief from the parking standards. And then we have Ms. Plummer here, who is our staff presenter today. So just like I said, give me one moment and I'm going to pull up those plans. Sorry about the wait, everyone.
Staff Hearing Officer Gokinda, I'm gonna restart my own city computer to see if that will help. So
Okay, great.
Message you if that gets back up and running.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if I could have someone just confirm that you're looking at the plans, that would help me. Ms. Plummer. Are you able to unmute?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, and yeah, let's see. I think we can start. Actually, if you can just go to page 4, it's the last sheet of the set, Ms. Gokinda. Okay, so I'm not gonna go over the project description since you covered that, but the existing site, as you mentioned, has a single-story residence and a detached 2-story building comprised of a garage and residential unit above. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a few photos of the site. The top 2 left photos are looking towards the development from Mitchell-Torena Street. And the top 2 right photos show the 2-story building off the alley with the existing garage area. Yeah, and then the other bottom photos, you'll see the bottom 3 are looking at the 2-story building from the backyard. That's all existing conditions. And then if you can go to page 2 of the plan set, Ms. Gokinda. Thank you. So the discretionary application we're reviewing today is a parking modification to grant relief from the parking standards. The parking requirement for the property is 2 spaces for the 2 permitted residential units for a total of 4 spaces. The site is currently considered legal non-conforming as it only provides 3 spaces. There are 2 covered spaces in the garage, and as you'll see on the plan, there's an additional uncovered space directly adjacent to the 2-story building. The project was initially submitted for building permit review to legalize the unpermitted conversion of a portion of the garage into an accessory dwelling unit, which, according to the applicant, has been the on-site condition since approximately 2012. During building permit plan check review, it was determined that the conversion of only a portion of the garage to an ADU and the remaining area to storage was problematic. And then if you can go to page 3, please. Thank you. And then just scroll up a little bit. I want to be able to show the as-built first floor as well as the existing. Okay, so the bottom right shows the permitted configuration of the garage, and then the top is the as-built condition. So as you can see with the as-built plan, the back portion of the garage was converted to a unpermitted residential unit. However, it only occupies a portion of the garage, with the area adjacent to the entry being proposed as additional storage, eliminating one of the required covered parking spaces. Essentially, that's that 12-foot 4-inch by 9-foot 8-inch area. The ordinance does allow for required covered parking to be converted to strictly an accessory dwelling unit without replacement parking. However, that doesn't extend to the conversion of required parking to storage. During building permit plan check, and while this went through the internal review process, staff outlined a couple alternative options for the applicant. One was to convert the entire garage, so all 708 square feet, to the ADU, or they could convert one entire covered parking space to an ADU rather than having it half ADU and the other to storage. Option 2 is to provide an additional replacement parking space elsewhere in the lot and apply for a covered parking exception. And option 3 was to revise the ADU floor plan in some way so that it only occupies the back portion of the garage. Really, there's a 10 by 20 foot for 24 foot area that's considered excess storage, really just because it's not needed to meet the minimum dimensions for a 2-car garage. And that would be at the rear of that area. And that would keep the existing garage intact that's needed for the covered parking spaces. The applicant subsequently submitted for a parking modification to permit the as-built configuration. So in order to approve a parking modification, there's a finding that reduced parking will meet parking demand generated by the site. As mentioned, the ordinance does allow for required parking to be converted to an ADU with no parking provided if the property is within a half mile of a bus stop, and that is the case for this property. There is also generally no parking demand associated with storage. However, there are a couple conflicting policy issues. For one, accessory dwelling units are not required to provide replacement parking, really for the benefit of statewide need for housing. Covered storage doesn't provide the same housing benefit, and it's generally not considered an appropriate land use to reduce required parking. Staff has not been in support of the requested modification, for one, because the modification is primarily to provide additional storage in place of required parking on an already non-conforming lot. And as previously mentioned, there are alternative design solutions that would comply with the ordinance. In some cases, they would be able to maintain already non-conforming parking or just avoid a parking modification by converting either the whole garage or one entire space to the ADU use. The applicant is aware of all of these design options. However, this is their preferred floor plan configuration because it does maintain the enclosed storage area as an amenity for the site. And I'll let them go through, the reasons why that might be appropriate for the site in their view. And then if you could just go back to sheet 4, just want to go into the photos one more time. So this project was reviewed by the ABR. They were supportive of the garage door being maintained to access the new storage space. Typically, and you can see that in the top 2 photo, and in the elevation that shows it clearly. So they want to maintain that's how it looks right now. They want to maintain that. The ABR was supportive of that. And typically the ordinance does require that garage doors not be provided to non-parking uses unless that's waived by a design body, and should be replaced with siding or some other wall covering, and that's to avoid the creation of a substandard garage. Staff is recommending that consider the findings for the parking mod, and if in support of the requested parking modification, then you would need to make the finding that reduced parking will meet anticipated parking demand generated by the site. Staff is also recommending an additional condition. However, it's up to your discretion that if the modification were to be approved, that the drive area immediately in front of the proposed storage area be removed and replaced with some type of barrier to prevent vehicle access. As you can see currently, the configuration allows for parking just along the garage rather than using the garage. And that is in the interior setback, which isn't consistent with the ordinance. So if you are in support of the parking modification, then we would just ask that you consider that condition, whether or not it's appropriate in order to avoid the creation of a half in, half out situation where a car might be parked in that substandard space that's being proposed for storage, as well as to avoid parking in the interior setback. And that concludes my presentation. Mr. Zink is here to further discuss the project and parking modification that they're requesting. And I'll be here for any questions throughout the rest of the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. I appreciate it. I'd like to invite Mr. Zink. Thank you for joining. If you would like to take us through your thought process and let me know which page you'd like me to start on.
You can actually go to the page 3, which is the 2 floor plans, the proposed and the existing. My name is Paul Zink, and I'm a local architect. I have worked in our city since 1992. That's perfect for the floor plan. I have been the ABR chair as well as the Single Family Design Board chair. Santa Barbara is beautiful because of our design review board process, our planning process, and the focus of neighborhood compatibility, as well as design quality. I'd like to start the presentation by saying that this is a housing project. This is an ADU housing project. As we all know, the state of California created the ADU laws because it's been too difficult to create new housing in communities throughout the state. Our city is not alone in having an abundance of rules and regulations that make it difficult to build new housing. So the state stepped in and created the ADU laws. In our local ADU ordinance that was approved by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, there is a checklist of design features that result in an ADU being ministerially approved, being approved without the planning department review. This checklist is for things like the style of the architecture, shiny roofs, glass railings, proximity of balconies and windows on the second floor. Another item on that checklist is to remove the garage door when there is a garage conversion. The project before you today is a conversion of an existing garage and storage area into an ADU. We are not completely converting the existing garage to create the ADU, which is why we are here. We are an exception to the checklist. Now, there are provisions for the designs that fall outside of this established checklist so that their projects can be reviewed for neighborhood compatibility. Our project was reviewed by ABR and they found it to be compatible with the neighborhood. This is an ADU housing project in which we're not using 100% of the existing garage to create the ADU. Our existing permitted garage was oversized with an additional storage area to the rear. We are converting the storage area and a portion of the garage to create the ADU. We are retaining the ability to park one car in the garage as well as some additional storage. I might point out that the original storage area was 300 square feet and the now proposed storage area is 135 square feet. So we are proposing less storage than what we originally had. The concern the city staff has is that with our project is that somebody may park a car in the 12-foot, 4-inch deep storage area. First of all, what's wrong with that? Second of all, why deny an ADU housing project because someone may park a car in the storage area? The ADU laws allow for the taking away of covered parking as well as storage to create an ADU. So if a property owner wants to save a portion of the garage for bikes and furniture and boxes, what's wrong with that if it looks good from the outside? The fact that a smart car or a golf cart can be parked in the storage area is no reason to create an extra additional hardship on the ADU. City staff has given us 3 options. Staff reviewed them. I disagree with all of these options. The first one was to make the ADU smaller and we turn that storage area into a 20-foot deep area large enough to park a car according to our city standards. The second option was to make the ADU larger and use the 12-foot 4-inch area and create another bedroom and make it part of the ADU. The third option was to remove the garage door, which then was later changed to installing a pipe bollard to prevent vehicles from pulling into the storage area, in addition to removing the concrete driveway in front of the storage door. I disagree with those three options. I think they're unnecessary to create an ADU. The state of California laws are very clear that the local government is not to create unnecessary barriers for the creation of ADU housing. Forcing my client to modify an existing permitted condition to prevent the possibility of a car being parked in the storage area is an undue burden on the project. And if you have any questions about that statement, I say, let's table it for 2 weeks and talk to the city attorney. Second of all, this is a subjective interpretation of how someone may or may not use the storage area. The ADU laws are clear that any local oversight of the ADU process needs to be objectively applied, like a shiny roof, glass railings, windows on the second floor closer than 15 feet. The fact that the storage area is 12 feet, 4 inches deep, and someone may park a car in the area is not an objective reason for denying this project. ABR has reviewed our project and said it is fine to retain the existing garage door as shown. We have an ADU that meets the state of California standards. Yes, our project was built without a building permit, and the current ADU laws allow for submitting plans to the building department to obtain permits for the non-permitted construction. At this point, I want to make reference to the letter that the city received from the neighbor, John Beardsmore. In some regards, I don't think Mr. Beardsmore fully understands the ADU laws that were imposed on the city. And I use the word imposed intentionally because these laws are in complete contrast to our previous planning process. I think it would be beneficial for the staff hearing officer to explain to Mr. Beardsmore that following the state ADU laws, the entire garage could be converted into an ADU housing unit without any parking being provided. The loss of parking from the state's perspective is not a concern. For our project, we are preserving one parking space and storage area. This has an overall less impact to the neighborhood. Once again, we are here requesting a modification because our project falls outside of the established ADU checklist for ministerial approval. We are converting a portion of the existing garage, and we are not removing the garage doors. Now, this is where I see the problem. Our city in the past has had a granny unit ordinance on the books for over 20 years. It's created a handful of granny units, which means the rules were written specifically to be impossible to achieve. With our current ADU ordinance, there's a checklist for the ministerial approval process with the option for exceptions to the checklist with some light oversight. As a former ABR and Single Family Design Board chair, I personally don't have a problem with light oversight of proposed ADU projects when the proposed design falls outside of this established checklist. The goal is to keep our city, our neighborhood special. ABR reviewed our project and doesn't have a problem with it. So why have a process for exceptions if you never grant an exception? Now, I hope today we can reach a resolution with the requested modification or continue the item for 2 weeks and revisit the project. If we're not able to find some common ground, I must say, I am solid in my belief that the Planning Commission will find it difficult to support denying an ADU housing project because the storage area may be used to park a car. The Planning Commission understands that the California Department of Housing and Community Development reviews the decisions of the city to determine if subjective standards are being used to further burden ADU housing. ABR has reviewed the project and doesn't have a concern about retaining the 2 single-car garage doors. One garage door being for the single-car parking space and the other garage door being access to the storage. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zink. Let me see. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment and actually ask Mr. Russell, are you able to take the screen again?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing then. And if I could ask you, Mr. Zink, do you mind muting yourself and turning your webcam off momentarily, and then we'll be able to ask you to join again. Thank you. And okay, so if you wish to speak on this particular item, 918 West Micheltorena Street, please do so by raising your hand. You can find the raised hand icon at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. It will indicate to me that you wish to speak. And at the moment, I do not see anyone who's raised their hand on this item. Give it another minute, but I do want to acknowledge that I did receive public comment from John Beardsmore that came in yesterday. So I just want to acknowledge that for the record and ask Ms. Gu if we received any other additional public comment.
No, we have not, other than Mr. John Beardsmore, we have not received any other public comment on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. I appreciate it. So I still do not see anybody who's raised their hand for this particular item. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and then like to invite Mr. Zink and Ms. Plummer back on oh great, Will, looks like you've got the plans up too. Perfect. I think if we could go to page 3. So yeah, if we could zoom in a little bit. So there's different, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things about accessory dwelling units, just to clarify that our city regulations, as well, that we were granted that ability to do so by the state of California, does allow for parking to be like you don't have to have parking for an accessory dwelling unit. This is a little bit different based on the project that's being proposed. And this is a site that's already non-conforming to the parking. And I guess I'm hearing you, Mr. Zink, and I really struggle, given all the potential solutions that you could avoid a parking modification to begin with. And particularly for making the unit larger. I understand not necessarily wanting to make a unit smaller, but to incorporate the majority of the storage area into the proposed floor space for the ADU, which is what many people do in order to achieve an accessory dwelling unit and avoid having to do the parking modification. This is such a stretch for me to understand why you didn't pursue, like why that isn't something that you and your client wish to pursue.
If that's a question, that's a choice between my client. It's not a requirement. And the fact is we have a checklist that says if we don't alter if the garage doors, if we don't remove the garage doors, we're not falling within the ministerial checklist, which is why we are here. And then the whole formulation of a parking mod comes in to cloud the situation. The issue is we're building an ADU and the ADU is here and we didn't take 100% of the garage to achieve it. How we left over the space is our choice. And if my client wants to keep 12 feet of it for whatever toys he has, then that's his choice. To say that, no, you need to do this is imposing an undue burden that the states won't support. The state legislators said you can't do that anymore.
In terms of, but again, there are design considerations that are options for you
You're correct.
that were not pursued.
I could make it smaller. I could make it larger. I could actually remove the garage door and then I would satisfy the city. Those are all additional financial things that my client would have to spend for what benefit? He doesn't have to. And so we get back into what the state of California imposed on the cities across the entire state was to stop meddling in creating additional barriers and burdens. That's why I'm willing to let this thing sit for 2 more weeks and we come back after you do a little bit of research with the city attorney's office to say, am what I'm saying valid? Because I have a feeling the planning commission will support me because they're fearful of 5-story buildings being built without design review because the city it becomes too challenging and the state is removing oversight to open the floodgates.
And could you tell me why you couldn't make it smaller because I think in terms of the minimum size required for a parking spot is what, 18.5 feet? I know normally we would say 10 by 20, but I think, and so, for maybe 18.5 feet, Pilar, is that something that, in terms of transportation, I'm pretty sure that's what would be a minimum size for a parking space in terms of that depth, and why not redesign slightly to accommodate a second parking spot on site for an already non-conforming situation?
Because what they have is already there. You're right, whether it's 18.5 feet or 20 feet, we could easily get rid of the entry and we can easily move the door somewhere else on the floor plan and prove we now have a 2-car garage again. Yes, that is an option that's available. My client doesn't want to do that. It's additional funds that he has to spend. It's been this way since 2012, which, all right, so it's been that way for, 10-ish years. It works fine. They got storage in there, whether it's lawnmowers, kayaks, bikes, and all that kind of stuff. If we make it larger, we're still going to put bikes, kayaks, and storage in that area. It won't be for a car. It's going to be for the stuff of the tenants.
So, Ms. Gokinda, just to clarify a little bit, from staff's perspective, the storage space can be used by any tenant on site. It's not strictly for the ADU. So an ADU is required to have living facilities, sleeping, eating, and cooking, and sanitation areas. Storage is not a required amenity. They can provide it if it were to be included within the unit. However, that's not the design that's being proposed, and that's why one of the suggestions was to incorporate the space into the ADU unit. So the storage space can be used by any tenant on the lot. And, I think that that's why we're here, is because of that storage space primarily, that it is not strictly for the ADU and is being used by all tenants on the lot. And then also to get back to your question regarding the size configuration. So the standard space for an uncovered parking space is 8 by 6 by 17.6. I know the transportation does have waivers to allow for slight reductions. If they were to look at redesigning the ADU to only occupy the back portion, that would be something they'd have to study, and it, of course, would have to be up to the applicant and their client if they wanted to pursue that option. But yes, there is the ability to waive the size requirements.
Mr. Zink.
Add one comment. The existing garage, the permitted set of plans was for a 2-car garage and storage in the rear. The storage in the back of the building was 300 square feet. So we had storage already that was on property. That storage allocation slid forward. Now the ADU removed a parking space. Okay, that's 100% above board, completely fine. We moved some of the storage in the space in the front, and there's a bonus involved because we saved a parking space. We actually have a parking space. We didn't take the entire 700 to create an ADU, which is completely within our rights. And we wouldn't be here today because I would have made all the boxes on the checklist work. It's only because I chose, or my client chose back in 2012, not to build 100% of the garage area that we're here today. But I'm not creating any new storage area. I already had 300 and I'm now down to 135. The fact that everybody gets to use it is a bonus. So it's really, this is kind of dicey because it's not 100% ADU, but I'm not increasing the use of my storage area. I'm making my storage area smaller than what was permitted on the site to begin with.
And then did you look at any other spot on site as a potential uncovered parking space? It's very tight, but I'm just wondering if that was, in looking at the other option that staff gave, which was, again, finding another uncovered parking spot and asking for the covered parking exception.
It has to do with outdoor living space. And if we want to have a fenced in patio for the front house, and we have a fenced in patio for basically the ADU people, and then the second story unit has their balconies. I would be taking that away to provide a parking space. In creating an ADU, I don't have to create parking for it. I'm within a half mile of a bus stop. I can make it all go away. I'm choosing to keep some. So the answer is, we looked at it and we said, no, I don't want to give the tenants anything less for their outdoor living space to shoehorn another parked car somewhere.
Understood with that particular one. I think my challenge is, like, in order to approve a parking modification, I have to be able to make specific findings. And I'm really struggling to make those findings given the in terms of the meeting the anticipated demand. We're already at a non-conforming structure. This property is already non-conforming to the parking. Yes, I understand that and you have the ability to make slight design changes that would avoid this modification entirely. So this is what, in terms of a physical hardship that exists, it's not necessarily the case. And we generally don't make decisions based on financial hardship. I know that certainly I understand the rationale for not wanting to change anything. And if there's, I'm trying to think if there's information from the city attorney's office. I'm having a hard time being able to make the findings today for this modification requested. I'm willing to postpone or to reschedule this 2 weeks from now if there's more information that I can get from the city attorney's office, or if there's an opinion. And I don't know, Ms. Plummer, if they weighed in on any of this in particular, but I'm struggling to be able to make this finding today, given the number of options, the redesign options that are available that would avoid it entirely. And as you say, you wouldn't even need a parking space for it. And Ms. Plummer, sorry.
I understand completely what you're saying about having to make the findings the way that the argument was framed or the discussion was framed. But the reality is, with an ADU, the state was not specific in saying that when you create an ADU, you have to have 100% of the garage be consumed by the ADU. That was a local thing that we added because we didn't want to have cheesiness in which someone takes 3/4 of the garage and leaves the garage door, and it just becomes, ugly. So locally, we have this condition that says, if you don't take over the entire garage, we need to look at it, and we need to make sure it's going to be pretty for our city. Okay, that is the checklist that threw us into this mod. This isn't a parking mod. Let go of that language and let go of that thinking, because that was pre-ADU law thinking. The ADU law says parking's irrelevant. Don't let that stop your process and your thinking in confining projects. We need housing, period. Open up the floodgates, period. Don't create additional barriers, period. That is why I once again I've told Pilar and other staff members, I feel strongly that Planning Commission is not going to support denying a housing project because of some cornball reason. And a parking mod is just a fabricated illusion to give me a denial. But in all actuality, that's what you're doing. You're stopping this thing from happening. You're forcing the client to spend more money. It's not necessary. It's unnecessary. It's a burden.
So one of the benefits that you were saying about the storage area is that it's available to all tenants on the site. But the way that this is designed, it's just kind of an open space. And I don't really have any sense of how it's distributed or how it's made, you know, there's no kind of clarity on that. And I'm just wondering if you had thought about, you and your client had thought about that as part of it. And I know that in terms of, yeah, I'll stop there.
I'll just tell you, my son lives someplace on the Upper East Side, and he rents a house with 500 people. You go in the garage, and there's taped things on the floor at which zone each person has. It's kind of arbitrary based upon the landlord and how they want to divvy it up. Some people have lots of boxes of books, and some people don't. Some people have wine fridges, and some people don't. We don't want to get into regulating and controlling how the storage areas gets utilized. It's there, it's available, and the landlord has it as an amenity that he can offer his tenants. And that's as far as I'll go with it. It's available.
So Ms. Kokinda, just to reiterate, staff doesn't have an issue with the ADU. You can occupy only a portion of the garage. You can convert the whole thing. The issue is that they are eliminating a required parking space, not just to accommodate an ADU, but to provide new storage space. The storage space is the primary concern, not the ADU. They could redesign so that the ADU covers that entire covered parking space. And in that case, they wouldn't need a parking modification. They could occupy the entire garage. That would not need a parking modification. They could also just occupy the rear area, which was, as Mr. Zink said, originally storage space, not needed for covered parking, and that would also not need a parking modification. This configuration, unfortunately, it occupies, only a portion. The ADU occupies only a portion of that covered parking space, and the rest is storage used by not just the ADU, but by the whole site. So I understand it as an amenity. Definitely there's potential benefits to that, but unfortunately how the ADU language is written, you only are required to provide living, sanitation, cooking facilities for the unit. You can provide storage, as I previously mentioned, but it would need to be part of the unit. So actually incorporated into the unit for storage specifically for that unit. That's not how it's currently designed because there is a partition separating the entry to that storage space so that that storage is dedicated for the whole site.
Right.
And yeah, that's just to clarify.
And Mr. Zink?
She was very correct in what she said. And the one point I want to make is we are not creating new storage area. I'm taking storage area that was in the back of the building and I'm moving it forward and I'm reducing the size. And the second point I want to make is objective standards versus subjective standards. And it's your opinion that it could be this way or it could not be this way. The fact is, objective standards, which is how ADUs are to be reviewed. And this is an ADU project because if you deny what we are asking for, which is outside of the checklist, you are denying the ADU. That is what we're talking about. Subjectively or objectively. I had 300 square feet of storage area. I now have 135 square feet of storage area. The fact is we lost a parking space. We created an ADU. The state said, we don't care.
I think that in going back to, there's just so many different designs that you can do that.
Subjective, that's a subjective statement.
That would avoid a parking modification that could still, I think Pilar is correct that it's an ADU, this is you're still able to have an ADU. There's just different ways. It's really the storage. It's the conversion, the losing parking for storage. And that's the challenge. And I think that, the Planning Commission could think very differently than I do. And I'm just trying to think, if I were to continue this for 2 weeks, like what new information could I have in order to help a decision? I don't, if there's something that you feel like you could get versus making a decision today, which is not in your favor, but that would allow you, that would give you the opportunity to go before the Planning Commission if you wish.
I'm okay with taking a denial and going to the Planning Commission, because when it goes to the Planning Commission, the City Attorney's Office will be able to make a presentation on what is subjective and what is objective and inform the Planning Commission about where this decision lies. The second thing the City Attorney can make reference to is what is an undue burden and hardship on an ADU project. That's a very gray, wide statement, but in general, the state law says, city government, stop doing this. Stop creating burdens on housing. And by Mickey Mousing it around saying, well, you could have done this or this or this or this or this, that's how I see this process, and it has no support when you look at the state legislature. The state legislature said cities shall not create an undue hardship, undue burden on ADU housing projects. By fabricating this thing about storage and parking and all this other stuff, you're creating a burden on our project. That's as simple as that. Yes, I could make it larger. My client could spend more money, but he also can rent it for more money. He chose not to. He says, I want to keep it just the way it is. And I said, okay, let's go for it. And we're pushing. That's my job. And I, once again, feel strongly about it because of the state of California legislation, the laws that were written that really empower promoting housing and reducing governmental oversight.
And Mr. Zink, I can just say that in terms of a larger, I think this project, or this is an example of a larger policy question in terms of covered parking and the direction and kind of what it's an interesting, like, what is how valuable is it? And I think that state law in terms of accessory dwelling units is, said that so long as you're within a certain area, but in terms of our current state of affairs and in our municipal ordinance, I can't make that finding, but I think you raised good points. But for today, I'm, if that's, given the situation, I'm gonna go ahead and make my decision. So if I could have everybody turn their webcams off, unless if there's anything else you want to add, Mr. Zink. And I think you've made your case, and I will be able to explain this, the options for appeal as well, if you all choose that. But thank you. And so I am going to go ahead and make my decision, and I am going to deny the request for the parking modification. I am not in support of this particular modification request because the request is to provide additional storage in place of required parking on an already non-conforming site, a non-conforming lot. That this particular site there are a number of design alternatives, either making it smaller or larger, that could accommodate, that either remove that parking space entirely or to maintain the covered parking on site that would still achieve the accessory dwelling unit. But again, this is really And this is really in regards to storage. So you could either allow the required parking to remain or not even need a parking modification to begin with. So that is my decision. I would like to ask Mr. Russell if you could pull up the appeals slide. So my decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission. In order to do so, you need to submit an appeal within 10 calendar days of this hearing. I can also say that if a planning commissioner either disagrees or has concerns about my particular decision, they are also able to pull this project and have it go before the Planning Commission. And that is my decision. There are certain fees associated, and we have the information here, but we have the information online as well about our appeal process. So thank you again to Mr. Zink for walking me through that project. And let's go ahead, and we have item C, which is the last project of the morning. This is 925 Garcia Road. This is a 6,900 square foot site that's currently developed with a 1,555 square foot single unit residence with an understory of 427 square foot garage and 214 square foot basement. The proposed project involves a 237 square foot addition enclosing the rear courtyard, an interior remodel, and construction of a new trash enclosure, AC unit, and demolition of an as-built covered patio structure in the backyard. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer is a front setback modification to allow for the proposed addition, trash enclosure, and AC unit to be located within the secondary 30-foot front setback. That is the project description. I'd like to ask Ms. Plummer, who's the project planner, to go ahead and make your presentation whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Ms. Gokinda. And yeah, we can start with just page 1. If you just look at the photos, if you can zoom into that, Mr. Russell, thank you. Just a little bit more. Okay, so the site is currently developed with an existing single unit residence. The top photo is if you're viewing the site from Garcia Road, and then the photo just beneath that again is from Garcia Road. And if you look to the, I guess the third photo, you can see the site as viewed from San Diego Road as it curves up that street. And the bottom photo is at the top of San Diego Road. You can see an existing hedge. Thank you, Mr. Russell. And I think that's all we'll need to cover those photos for now. The project, as you noted, is for a 237 square foot addition enclosing the rear courtyard, an interior remodel, construction of a trash enclosure, installation of an AC unit, and demolition of an as-built covered patio at the backyard. The project does require a front setback modification to allow the addition, enclosure, and AC unit to be located in the secondary 30-foot front setback off San Diego Road. If you'll go to page 2, please, Mr. Russell. Thank you. So this shows the existing configuration at the very back of the property. You can see the covered patio structure, which is being proposed for demolition. You can also see the area being proposed for the addition, which is essentially enclosing a courtyard. I also want to point out the setbacks. You'll notice the dashed line shape shows the two 30-foot front setbacks and the 10-foot interior setback. As you can see, the site is highly constrained with only a portion of the house complying with the required setbacks, and it's therefore considered legal non-conforming. And yeah, it's just that really small triangle that really complies with the setback areas. Next slide, please. Or next sheet, please. And yeah, just zoom in a little bit. Thank you. So as you can see, the proposed addition enclosing the courtyard area does not extend beyond the existing footprint of the residence, which again is already non-conforming. The trash enclosure is proposed just directly adjacent to the property line off San Diego Road. And the air conditioning unit just by that is proposed at 8 feet from the property line. And then let's see, I'll go to the addition of the elevations just so we can see that. It's sheet 8. Great. So I mostly want to focus the top two. There's no changes to that. That's the existing configuration off Garcia Road. And then the next two really show the area of addition. So you can see as far as exterior changes, it's pretty minimal to accommodate that addition. As earlier discussed, and as you saw in the photos previously, the site primarily is facing Garcia Road, and as you go up San Diego Road, there's a higher elevation that's really represented in the elevations. You can see it goes from a 2-story elevation off Garcia Road to a 1-story if you were sitting above San Diego Road. And the property is screened by an existing landscape parkway, low retaining wall, and a hedge. In addition, the secondary front setback that you previously saw generally acts as a side yard connection to the backyard. Staff is supportive of the requested front setback modification to accommodate the addition. The addition is considered very modest in scale. It's tucked in, thank you for going back to that, Mr. Russell. It's tucked into the footprint of the residence. It's not anticipated to cause any noise or privacy issues. Staff is also supportive of the trash enclosure and AC unit. Although the trash enclosure is located at the property line, both it and the AC unit, which is again approximately 8 feet, will be screened from San Diego Road by existing hardscape and landscape buffers. And there's also a 4-foot drop in elevation at that area from San Diego Road to the property. Neither the enclosure or AC unit are immediately adjacent to the public are adjacent to the public right of way. So rather than to residential units as you would typically see in an interior lot. So there are no anticipated issues to noise or privacy related with those structures. And that concludes my presentation. Again, we're supportive of it. This project was exempt from design review, and I will be here for any questions if you have any. I'm not sure if Ms. Poole is, oh, yes, she is. So Ms. Poole is the architect for the project, and I'll turn it over to her if she has anything to add about the project. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hi.
And Ms. Poole, if you'd like, I've just invited you to share. There you go. Now we have your webcam.
Great, thank you. Okay, if you could zoom out just a little. Oops.
Looks like.
Do I have control now?
No. Let me know, Will, if you need me to share screen. Sorry, Ms. Poole.
Once it resets itself, it should be fine. One moment.
Okay. Thanks for being patient. There we go. Great. And let us know if you have a different page that you want to start on. You can let Mr. Russell know where you'd like to go.
This is fine to start with. Obviously, this project, I understand you guys saw the neighbor across the street at a hearing last week, and that neighbor across the street is buffered by two houses. It's not a corner lot. And I wanted to point out that because this project is here really just because it's on a corner lot and it has 2 front setbacks. If this were a typical situation with neighbors on each side, then this would not even be coming to show. San Diego Road is a dead end and only has about 5 neighbors living on it. as you can see, this is the area we're proposing for the trash enclosure and AC unit. This is the setback, the 30-foot setback that is constraining the lot. If we can go to back to sheet 2. And pan over to the left to view 5, I believe. There we go. View 5 here in the corner shows that area of the proposed trash enclosure and AC unit along this walkway. Gives a good idea about how far below the street and parkway that area is, well screened from view. And in addition, there's a 12-foot parkway buffer from the roadway. The roof line we're proposing is very low slung, very low slope, and will not interrupt any neighbors' views. I think it will be a very nice addition for the neighborhood and for the owners to accommodate their large family. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Poole. If you could go ahead and mute yourself and turn your webcam off using it at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to open it up to public comment. If anyone wishes to speak for this project, 925 Garcia Road, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your on the bottom portion of your screen. And you can see here that what the raised hand icon looks like. I just don't see anyone right now who's raised their hand, but I can say that I did receive 2 comments, public comments, one from Bridget Gardner and the other one from Carol Ann Cole. So I just want to acknowledge those 2 for the record and ask Ms. Gu if there were any other comments that we received as of this morning.
No, we did not receive any other public comment other those you mentioned. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gu. And I can ask Ms. Poole and Ms. Plummer to come back on. And Ms. Russell, if you could take us back to the proposed site plan. So I went out on site and walked around the neighborhood. And I am familiar with this because, like you said, I saw a project a couple of weeks ago across the way. This site is a little bit different, as you mentioned, because it has 2 front setbacks, which are both pretty significant, you know, 2 30-foot front setbacks, so that any kind of addition is going to trigger a modification. I mean, the majority, there's only a small development area that wouldn't potentially trigger a modification for the front setback. And on the whole, I don't, the one question that I have was, it was just looking at this in 2D and then being out on site, I was wondering, and you may have already said this when you showed us view number 5, but just to clarify that the trash and recycling bins would be on the lower portion, that they wouldn't be at the street level, they would be behind that wall. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was, I had a little, it was a little hard to read on the plans, or just, I wanted to make sure that that was my understanding.
That view 5 really should, well.
Okay, that makes sense. And in terms of the comments that I received from members of the public, they were both supportive of the project. They didn't have any issues with it. Similarly, I can go ahead and make the findings that I find that the front setback modification, specifically allowing the addition, the trash enclosure, and the AC, the air conditioning unit, to encroach in the secondary front setback off of San Diego Street is consistent with the purposes and intent of our zoning ordinance and is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. They cannot, based on that little walkway between the wall and the landscape parkway, the AC unit and the trash enclosure would be very well hidden from view. And just the way that the lot is sloped is significant enough that it wouldn't be, it wouldn't, you're not looking, it's not a prominent feature. It would be very well hidden from the public right of way. Similarly with the addition, it's a modest addition. It's not, it's similarly with I don't see any particular issue given the size of it and the fact that it's fairly low profile and given the slope of the site and that you were conscious of how it was designed in terms of the overall siting and the different levels and different approaches, both from Garcia and San Diego. And that is, and if I didn't mention this already, but I'm including the air conditioning unit in that, that's similar to the trash enclosure. The proposed location for it is going to be very well hidden with the wall and the significant amount of landscaping along that parkway. So that is my decision. And I just want to announce that there is a 10-day appeal process. If anyone wishes to appeal my decision, they may do so by submitting an appeal within 10 calendar days. And my decision may also, if a member of the Planning Commission has concerns or wishes to further investigate, they can pull this project and bring it to the Planning Commission if they so wish. And that is it. Thank you so much, Ms. Poole and Ms. Plummer, for this project.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that was the last item for today, December 1st. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.